Emily Dickinson once wrote, "We turn not older with years, but newer every day." I've been turning a lot to the poetry of Emily Dickinson, for her words speak to my soul. And so when I stumbled upon her poem, Autumn, I just had to share it with you. The morns are meeker than they were. The nuts are getting brown. The berry's cheek is plumper. The rose is out of town. The maple wears a gayer scarf. The field a scarlet gown. Lest I should be old-fashioned, I'll put a trinket on. I've been putting many trinkets on here at Old Stonewell Farm, decorating the chicken coop with pumpkins, and yes, that was Fritz who wanted to take a look at the chickens. But autumn is also a time to remember the blessing of the animals, made famous by St. Francis, who had a very good connection with animals, a deep one. And so one night I went to Manchester, Vermont, where they were having a blessing of the animals at the Congregational Church. I had to leave Fritz behind because he's still not quite socialized. He did have a wonderful afternoon, though, with a visit from his grandma and grandpa from New Jersey. He likes to pretend he is a good boy, but he has a ways to go when it comes to training. I spent the afternoon making one of the very first recipes I ever learned how to make, apple pan dowdy. I was in high school in home economics. I'm curious, what was the very first thing that you ever learned how to bake? Or what's your favorite fall dish to make? Let me know. I would love to hear. I was also excited to show Fritz my pink popping corn. Something new I tried in my garden. Now, will it pop? I'm not sure. As I take a walk out among the leaves, I'm reminded by the way they fall that I too need to let all my fears fall to the ground. Everything that I'm holding on to, I need to release to God. For I know that God does redeem all things. As the autumn rains came, I discovered yet one more little pumpkin hanging from the corn stalks. I also discovered this lonely cow. My neighbor informed me that it was a new cow that wasn't quite fitting in with the other ones. My heart broke for her, and I kept thinking of another one of Emily Dickinson's poems, in which she writes, "I fear me this is loneliness, the maker of the soul." Perhaps loneliness is the maker of our souls. Perhaps loneliness has a thing or two to teach us. My friends, welcome to Old Stonewell Farm, where I now share with you a poem from another author, one that you have already met. Nothing lasts forever, though it might seem that way. All the good we hug and treasure seems to vanish far away. All the dreams we let slip by, all the troubles that pile so high. Nothing lasts forever, though it might seem that way. That's a poem that I wrote when I was, I believe, 10 years old. For the years, I would dust it off and read it, and I would always read it with a touch of sadness. What was I focusing on that I was missing? Recently, when I revisited the poem, I read it with fresh new eyes. Rather than focusing on sadness and perhaps the goodness that didn't last forever, whatever it might have been, I now read it with such comfort and joy, because I also mentioned the troubles that pile so high. Nothing lasts forever, and our troubles don't last forever either. So that poem, to me, right now, like 40 plus years later, it is a reminder that we are always in a season, and each season is different, and each and every day that we breathe, we are learning, we are growing, we are embracing new things, we are saying goodbye to old things. And we have to have that reminder that whenever something new does begin in our life, or if we want that something new always comes with something ending. So nothing lasts forever. And that is not a sad statement. In fact, if anything, that should make your heart rejoice, because whatever you are going through, if it's a trial, a tribulation, if it's doubts, if it's depression, nothing lasts forever. It will change. And the goodness, well, nothing lasts forever. And so we shouldn't live with fear of something that we love being taken away from us, or any goodness we have in our life ending. We shouldn't be waiting for the other shoe to drop, right? And we should just be in the moment and embrace what we have, good and bad. Embrace the moment, knowing the moment doesn't last forever, because there are many other new moments that want to come. Yes, I wrote that poem when I was about 10 years old. And I guess I was going through my poet stage, because I would take a blank notebook and a pencil. And I would like to say that I went off into the woods to write, but I lived in congested North New Jersey, so there weren't any woods to escape to. Rather, what I would do is create that wooded, sacred place in my mind. I would take a blanket and 2 chairs, and I would drape it, and I would make my little private tent or fort. Or I would take old pieces of plywood in my father's workshop, and I would lean them against the wall to make a lean-to, and that would be my little hut that I would escape to. I also had a little kerosene lamp, filled it up with the kerosene, and I had the wick, and it was a tiny one, and my mother allowed me to have it, but with supervision. So I would take my kerosene lamp, and I would then place it in a safe place near me, and I would begin to write what was on my heart. I guess even back then, I was embracing my inner monk. I wanted just to escape away from everything that was around me and go to a holy place, a sacred place, a quiet place. I always wanted to commune with God, or at least try to hear the angels speak to me or sing. Always looking for that glimpse of the divine. That's why I love so much the writings of the Celtic spiritual mothers and fathers, the monks and the nuns, and all the great spiritual leaders like Saint Francis, that we celebrate the blessing of the animals. It is said that even his donkey wept when he died, and wept at St. Francis's grave. So many stories, but Francis was the only one who communed with the animals and wanted to get a glimpse of the divine through all that God has created. So many people found the spirituality of animals very powerful, like Saint Kieran and his cow. He told his mother that he wanted to leave and go to the monastery, and he wanted to take one of the family's cows with him, but his mother wouldn't let him take the cow. So Kieran started to walk to the monastery, and one of the family cows followed him and went to the monastery with Kieran, and it is said that that cow gave so much milk for many, many years. It was abundant, enough to provide milk for the monks and to make cheese and butter. So when my neighbor told me about the lonely cow in the pasture and how she just wasn't finding her place with the rest of the herd, it really tugged at my heart, and I kept just watching her all by herself on the back hill. And I wondered, what could I do for this cow? Well, the other morning I realized that there wasn't anything that I had to do. God sees everything and knows how to come to us in our moments of being the only one in the pasture and nobody else wants to be with us. Well, as the lonely cow was weighing on my heart, I looked out the window and I began to notice that the cow started to walk over near the chicken coop. The cow was actually staring at the chicken coop. So when I went out to take a closer look, I saw that my two chickens were looking back at the cow, and they were just staring at each other. And I wonder if in some special holy way they were communicating. I wonder if my chickens knew that this cow was not quite fitting in. I wonder if this cow kind of noticed the chickens and like, hey, can you be my friends? I know I'm letting my imagination run wild, but my friends, it was powerful. And ever since, that lonely cow does make her way over to the chicken coop. And every time she does, my chickens, wherever they might be, they go and they look at her. And this has been happening for a week now. Nothing lasts forever. The good, the bad, our lonely times, our moments that we think that we don't have a friend, it's not going to last forever. God is at work in your life. God is hearing your cries. God will answer. Well, it's been many years since I've written poetry, but perhaps I need to pick up the pencil again and begin to write a few poems. Poetry is a great way to express your feelings, to get out onto paper your innermost fears and desires and hurts. It's a way to heal. I love Emily Dickinson, and she wrote a couple of poems about loneliness. And of course, I gravitate to Anne Bradstreet, who came to this country in 1630 when she was 18 years old and married, and she came to the new land and she embraced it, and all her poetry speaks of this wild land, this loneliness, this constant fear of sickness and death. But through it all, her poems always point to, where does she find comfort? Where does she find help? Where does she find hope? And that's God. Poetry does have the power of reaching a lonely soul. In fact, words in general, can have a healing effect on a person who is feeling sad. And so always be careful of the words that you speak. And choose them wisely, remembering that what you say could be the very thing that another soul is needing to hear. Emily Dickinson led a very secluded life, and she wrote about being lonely. But the more I unpacked the word lonely, I began once again to see it in a new way. Yes, there is loneliness, the pain of being isolated. That is very, very real. But in French, the word lonely or alone is solitude. And there's a difference. Solitude is that space in which we retreat and we are alone with our thoughts, and it can lead to self-awareness. It can lead to rest. It can lead to renewal. Solitude is not necessarily a bad thing, but it can be the very thing we need in which to grow and to heal. Turning that word lonely and alone, which can be so negative in our culture today, and reminding us that not all loneliness and aloneness is bad. Again, I know the pain of being alone. I know how desperate a heart can be to have companionship, and we do need companionship. So I'm not belittling that lonely feeling. And if you are feeling alone right now, if you are feeling the pain of loneliness, I cannot say it enough, stress it enough. I wish I could just reach out to you and hug you and hold your hand and to let you know you are not alone. Yes, it might seem like the world has abandoned you, but God has not. And so hold on to that fact that God has not abandoned you, and there are angels that God will send your way. Like my little lonely cow, the way she walked over to the chickens, who knows how the Spirit is leading us. So back to the word loneliness and solitude, the more I began to think about that word and how can we reframe it and find that shred of hope. And that's when I discovered that the Old English meaning of alone really was the words, 2 words, all one. That's when I felt my soul rejoice. I just sat down and I thought, wow, God, this reminder needs to get out there. For all who are feeling alone, they need to hear, I need to hear in my aloneness, all in one. All that I am, all that I feel, all that I struggle with, I bring to the one who can handle it all. All that you are is being held in the one who cares the most about you. So powerful is poetry that I recently learned there is a shop in London that opened up and it's called the Poetry Pharmacy. It is a bookshop that features all this poetry. Each of the bookshelves, it is arranged by emotions. So grieving, heartbroken, fearful, doubting, whatever the emotion, there is a section addressing that emotion filled with poetry books that can speak to that and heal your soul. So instead of self-medicating with pills or alcohol or whatever we might turn to make us feel better, to numb whatever pain we have, this bookshop is turning to poetry as the medicine for a grieving world. Every time I hear something like that, I think, how come I didn't think about that idea? You don't have to be a poet. You don't have to be a fan of poetry. But take the time to honor your feelings, to not be afraid of them, to write them down, to express them, and take it from the 10-year-old me who wrote that poem so many years ago. A reminder, nothing lasts forever, though it might seem that way. All the good we hug and treasure seems to vanish far away. All the dreams we let slip by, all the troubles that pile high. My friends, nothing lasts forever, though it might seem that way. Until next time, God bless.